Well, good morning, everyone. Really honored to be here this morning, and especially honored to welcome to Prince George's County again, Secretary Marsha Fudge. What I have to say is this has just been a spectacular morning here in a very special place in Suitland, Maryland, where we have a really great example of what's possible regarding affordable housing for not only Prince Georgians but for Americans. And I have to tell you that this conversation that we've had this morning is not the first conversation we've had with Secretary Fudge, where she has shared with us very clearly not only her vision, but the vision of this administration to ensure that America is as good as its promise. What we agree upon is that promise begins with the guarantee of housing. And I use that word because we all share the belief that every American has the right to enjoy a certain standard of living, no matter that person's income, no matter that person's background, race, creed, or color. We believe that that promise begins with affordable housing that is available to all Americans. And so we want to thank Secretary Fudge for being here, for having a discussion with not only me, but colleagues from across the region about the way that we can work more collaboratively to ensure that that vision becomes a reality for all of our families. And so we thank her. And I want to now turn over the podium, I believe, to Councilmember Rice, who will also bring some comments. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to County Executive Alsobrooks, and we really appreciate your hospitality and showcasing some of the great things that are happening in this region. I am the chair of the National Association of Counties Human Services and Education Committee, and so when the Secretary staff reached out and said, we want to talk about some of the great things that were espoused by the President last night in terms of that dream, getting America back on track. We know that that incorporates access to housing. We understand that all of the things that he talked about last night are interconnected, getting people back to work, making sure that people have access to affordable and high quality health care, making sure that our children are educated, making sure that mental health is a priority for us in our community. They are all tied to stabilized housing. And the reality is that we have a great partner at the federal government leading the effort to ensure that that vision happens. And so today it was a great opportunity for this Metropolitan Washington region to come together with the Secretary to talk about some of the things that we feel the federal government can do to be even better partners with us to ensure that we have successes like the one behind you and successes all across this region. And so we are really thankful to you, Secretary Fudge, for taking the time out to discuss with us and to, again, talk about ways in which the federal government can continue to be a great collaborative partner and a terrific support for us in moving forward. And so now I'd like to turn it over to the chair of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments and the vice chair to be able to talk to us a little bit about what is going on in this region as a whole. So let me turn it over to Chair Christian Dorsey.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Rice, and I'd like to thank Secretary Fudge for not only convening this gathering so that we could talk about housing policy, something that's so important to our region, but for also reminding us that her mandate at HUD and our job as public officials is not just about housing policy. It's about realizing the American ideal of being one country that works not just for some, but that works for all. And housing is central to that. And it's also central to this region's plans, to how we actually move forward, a place of high opportunity and growth, but making sure that not only no one gets left behind in that, but the historic barriers that have prevented people who are lower income and people of color from fully realizing the growth and the benefits that come from being a part of a dynamic region, that we can address those historical inequities. And housing is a principal key. It's a key to not only make sure that people are secure and have a decent place to live and are not overburdened by its costs so that they become overburdened in other areas of life like food security and opportunity, but it's also central if we're going to achieve real goals that are transformative for communities, such as combating climate change. It doesn't happen if we don't have enough housing located in the right places so that our communities are not built on sprawl and people are congesting our roads and emitting greenhouse gases through automobile transportation. but can instead take advantage of high opportunity areas that allow them to walk and bike and use transit. We also recognize that if housing is not interconnected with all of these other priority areas, effectively, we're just not going to be able to do all that we can. And it's wonderful in the region to have an outlet for our good ideas and our commitment in a federal agency that wants to benefit that by working collaboratively together. So we are open, Secretary Fudge, to being your laboratory of innovation, for being able to partner with the great ideas that you have to demonstrate the proof of concept for how we can actually drive transformative change. So thank you all for this opportunity to be here today. And I think I'm now turning it over to the woman of the hour, Secretary Fudge.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for having me today. It is a real pleasure to be with people who realize that boundaries do not determine their work. This is a group of people who work together from across the DMV, and I am just so very honored to be in this place to see the great work you're doing. Clearly, as a Secretary of HUD, I see a lot of things that are not so good. Daily, I see things that I wish that I had not seen. But today, I am seeing success. And I think it's important that people know where they can come to see success. This is a model. This is a model for a nation, the greatest nation in the world, that still lets 500,000 people sleep on its streets. A nation, the greatest nation in the world, that still allows children to lose a whole year of school because they don't have broadband or internet. The same place where we don't take care of our seniors, those people who have given their all. This is the greatest nation in the world. Everybody should live like this. Nobody should live in squalor. I am just moved by what I've heard today. My job is to make people's lives better. That is what I do. That is what I am charged to do by the President of the United States, and that is what I do. I'm a public servant. It is what I love to do. But I can't do it alone. So it is great to be with people who are helping to do the work that we know needs to be done. So I just want to thank you for allowing me to spend a little time with you today. And know that when the President gave his State of the Union address last night, he said, this is our moment. This is our moment. Right now, through the rescue plan and COVID packages and the bipartisan infrastructure plan, there are more resources available to cities and counties and states than ever before. Use it so that the people you serve will know that you care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Megan?
So I think we're going to open it up to just take a few short questions if folks have any questions.
Secretary Fudge, a quick question about the accountability piece. We heard from the president yesterday talking about the fact that watchdogs are back in the government, ensuring that the money that the government lays out for Americans gets to them. How are you ensuring that the money that's laid out for housing gets to those Americans that need it?
First off, we're very transparent throughout the administration. We follow the president's lead. If he says tell it, we're going to tell it all. We're going to make sure that everybody gets what they need. If you send us a request, we're going to make sure we respond. I think that it is important for us to understand that we are guardians. We are good shepherds of the resources that the people have given us. And I think it's important that we're accountable and that we're transparent.
Secretary Fudge, I would like to ask you, we're in a very heated market for housing. And a lot of people, I'm going to tell you, I just drove in here. There was a sign that said $300,000 for per house sold out. How do you keep a heated market from pricing out people?
The only way to do it is to put more housing in the market, more moderate, low income, and affordable housing. And so what the president has done in his last request to Congress is requested resources that we can build at least 1 million homes. 1 million. In addition to other things that we're working with housing finance agencies and others, because we know that if we don't put any housing on the market, it's just basic supply and demand. And so because there's not enough supply, the prices just keep going up because they can. Once we take the stress off the market by putting new housing in, so what we've done is we're putting more money into our home program, our housing trust fund, our CDBG resources and home resources to help fill the gap between what it costs to build a home and what it costs to sell a home. So that's what we're doing as an administration. As well as on the other side, for people who want to purchase a home that are having difficulty, we are looking at down payment assistance. We have recalculated student debt so that it's no longer the big impediment that it used to be. We have looked at valuations. So we are doing a lot to make the whole situation move. But it's going to take Congress to do its part. It's going to take local communities to do their part and make sure that they don't make building homes harder because of their zoning and planning as well. So it takes all of us, but we're doing our part.
Can you give an example in this region how, I mean, I see this building behind you, but more examples of how you're working with partners in this region to increase affordable housing?
Well, maybe they might want to answer the
Yeah.
question themselves.
So we're glad you asked that question. That's the perfect question. That's the reason we're here today. Is this is an example of how we were able to use some of the federal funding through the home program to buy down the cost of housing and make it affordable for many in our community. This is an example of, and you heard that it was sold out, where we have teachers who've been able to afford housing here. We have many other young professionals who are able to afford housing. And we're using not only those funds for properties like this, but we've also been able to use funding for right of first refusal to be able to purchase homes, for example, along the Purple Line and some of the other areas that we know will become valuable over time, to ensure that in particular some of our seniors will be able to continue to afford to live in those houses. We're likewise working with the federal government and state government to have funding for our Housing Investment Trust Fund to continue to make sure that housing remains affordable. We recognize that as our county grows, we want to make sure that every Prince Georgian can afford to live in the communities that raise them. So this is why this is important, and this is just a beautiful example of what's possible through the federal government and the funding they provide to us.
Madam County Executive, a quick question. I was going to touch upon that a little bit. Summarize why this location was one of them chosen. For those who may not know, while Suitland has not been an area that has been looked upon of getting affordable housing. Why here?
Well, that's a great question. I grew up here in a place called Shady Side, not too far from here, and I can tell you that the community that you're seeing now has suffered so much over the last several years, so much so that we have the Census Bureau here. Many of the people who worked here would leave in the evenings and never want to come back here. This is an example of how we now create a space where you can work here, you can live here, you can do business here, and this is how it starts: is first creating housing that is affordable for the people who work across the street here. And we know that we're attracting people from around the region to work in a community like this. But again, the home funds made it possible to buy down the cost. About $1.5 million were used here. The county also contributed funding, and we are so elated to be able to make it possible for teachers and firefighters and police officers and others to live in this property alongside their seniors, the elders in their lives. And so this is a great example of, again, of what's possible.
We'll do 2 more questions.
Let me just say one more thing. This nation has disinvested in housing for more than 50 years. That is part of the problem, because we have not, for the last 50 years, really invested in putting new housing on the market that was affordable housing. There really is no affordable housing in this country today, based upon what we've always known to be affordable. So we are finally starting to invest in housing, and that's the real difference. It's just an attitude. It's just the will to do it, and that will exist today.
Can you talk a little bit about what you learned during the roundtable from some of the local leaders, what they told you that will help your office to better assist them moving forward?
Well, they had wonderful ideas. So many of them I probably can't do half of them. But what they talked about is how we can assist them with things like paying down the cost of rental and homeowners, how we can start to look at vouchers in a different way, how we can make using the tools that we have easier, how we can make LIHTC easier to use. We talked about how we can do public-private partnerships. So there are a lot of things that we talked about that I think are doable. And there are things that we're going to take a look at. Some things maybe just take a small or a minor change. Other things are bigger, and it takes us some time to look at it. But we're going to look at all of the things that were brought to us today.